As I stepped down from the stage, the spotlight behind me dimmed, but the chill in the air only grew colder. I smiled as cameras flashed, trophy still warm in my hands, but inside, my chest felt hollow, like I'd just said the wrong thing at the wrong funeral. The industry's top award, my name engraved in gold, and yet, not a single executive from my own company met my eye. I should have been floating, elated. Instead, I was scanning the crowd for something I couldn't quite name. Approval? Support? Maybe just one familiar face, not frozen in forced applause. That's when I saw him, Damon Kessler, our new CEO, standing near the back of the room. Arms crossed, not clapping. His lips were pressed into a thin, unreadable line. When our eyes met, he didn't smile, didn't nod, just turned and disappeared into the shadows behind the curtain. I kept walking, steady, smile intact. I'd learned to read the unspoken in this industry, and that wasn't congratulations. That was warning. I made my way through the crowd. Cheek kisses, handshake after handshake. PR managers from other firms offered compliments laced with questions. So what's next for you? How's Veritas treating its rising star? You ever think about going independent? I laughed them off with grace. But the suspicion was growing. It wasn't just Damon. Even from my own team. The hugs felt stiff, forced, polite. I'd won something massive, but I'd also made myself visible. Too visible. And people don't like what they can't control. Backstage, I finally found a moment to breathe. I slipped into a quiet corner behind the velvet partition and opened my tote bag to tuck the award away. That's when I saw it. My Parker pen, silver, engraved with my initials, lay at the bottom. Snapped in half. The same pen I'd used for every client pitch, every strategy note, every deal that brought this company to the top. Broken clean through the middle. The metal edges jagged, as if crushed. I blinked. Staring down at it? Accident? Maybe, but I couldn't shake the feeling. That night, in the back of the Uber, I sat with the trophy beside me, but all I could think about was that pen, that fracture, that silence in the room, the way Damon had walked away, the way no one from the executive team had taken a photo with me. I had done everything right, delivered results, led with integrity, brought home the win, but something had shifted. I could feel it pressing against my ribs, cold and tight. I didn't know it yet. But the applause wasn't celebration. It was the sound of a door closing, soft, final, and very, very quiet. The morning he walked in, the energy shifted. It wasn't just the expensive watch or the precisely tailored suit. It was the silence that followed him, the kind that spreads before a storm. People straightened their backs, lowered their voices. A few even stood as if royalty had arrived. His name was Damon Kessler, our new CEO. The man chosen by the board to bring Veritas into the future. What that meant? No one really knew, only that it came with headlines, a rebrand budget, and a mandate for change. He introduced himself in the all-hands meeting like he was unveiling a new product. Agile, disruptive, scalable. His favorite words. He spoke of culture like it was code, of legacy like it was a virus. "We're not here to honor the past," he said, pacing across the stage like a tech evangelist. "We're here to outpace it." Applause followed. I didn't join in. I sat in the second row, notebook open, pen ready, when his eyes passed over me. They didn't pause. I wasn't new, I wasn't shiny, I wasn't someone he needed to impress. Later that week, I was scheduled for a brief introduction, just a handshake, a hello, maybe 5 minutes, but the moment I walked into the boardroom, I knew something was off. Damon didn't rise from his chair. He looked at me like I was an item on a checklist. "Lauren Carr," he said flatly. I extended my hand. He didn't take it, just leaned back in his chair and said, "You've been here what, 7, 8 years?" 8, I replied, hand still hanging in the air. He nodded, then turned his eyes back to his tablet. That's a long time in one place. I lowered my hand. It's been a long road. Growth, big wins, strong client ties. He smirked. We don't need legends. We need lean. The sentence landed like a slap disguised as a compliment. That was the entire meeting. Over the next 2 weeks, the restructuring began. HR was suddenly people experience. Department heads were replaced with agile squads. Longtime managers were quietly removed. The office filled with unfamiliar faces, young, hungry, loyal to Damon, not the company. He called it a cultural recalibration. I called it something else, a purge. One Friday afternoon, I watched through the glass as a VP, 30 years in the business, walked out with a banker's box. No announcement, no email, just gone. His name removed from the directory by Monday morning, that night. I stayed late to finish a proposal. The office was quiet, almost reverent. As I walked toward the elevators, I passed by Damon's door. It was cracked open. Inside, he stood alone, looking at the wall of client charts, arms crossed, like a general mapping a battlefield. I don't know if he saw me, but I saw enough. This wasn't change. This was conquest. At home, I lay awake for hours. That meeting, that smirk, that sentence. We don't need legends. We need lean. It repeated in my head like a warning, a dismissal before the blow even landed. I wasn't one of his people. I wasn't meant to survive this new Veritas. And yet, a strange thing stirred in me. Not fear, not yet, but a tightening, a tension in the air, like something was coming, and I had already been marked. It happened on a Tuesday, quiet, surgical, like someone had pressed delete and moved on. I was sipping coffee at my desk, reviewing a timeline for a major brand strategy, the same campaign I'd proposed and shaped over the past 6 months, when the meeting invite came in, a project sync for Vision Track revamp, scheduled in 30 minutes. My name wasn't listed as host. It wasn't even on the invite list. I blinked, refreshed the screen, still nothing. A sick chill bloomed in my gut. Vision Track had been mine, from inception to execution. Every phase had my fingerprints. I'd pitched it late one night on a Zoom call, sketched the framework on a napkin, and sold it to our toughest client. But apparently, none of that mattered anymore. I walked down the hall toward conference room 4A. The glass walls didn't hide much. Inside, I saw a young strategist, Jenna, standing at the whiteboard, mapping out the very same timeline I designed. Same fonts, same milestones, same phrasing. When I stepped in, conversations dropped. Jenna gave me a nervous smile. Hey, Lauren, I didn't know you were coming. I kept my expression still. I wasn't invited. Someone coughed awkwardly. Someone else glanced at their laptop. No one spoke. I scanned the room. My strategy deck, was on the screen, but the title slide had been stripped. No Veritas logo, no prepared by Lauren Carr, just white text. Neutral and cold. Vision Track V3.0. Strategy flow. I stood there for 3 full seconds. Then I turned and walked out, back in the elevator. I stared at my reflection. The brushed steel doors offered a warped mirror, just enough to see how exhausted I looked. My blazer was sharp, my posture perfect, but my eyes, they were asking questions I hadn't dared to ask before. Maybe I really am too much, too experienced, too vocal, too old school for their new agile world, too visible. I clutched my coffee tighter and willed the thoughts to stay buried. Back at my desk, I opened the original strategy file. I scrolled through every slide, every note. Then I opened the copy Jenna had presented. Identical, word for word. Even the closing line, strategy is trust in motion. My line, a phrase I'd coined 5 years ago in a client pitch and had since become a quiet signature. And yet, there it was, on her slide deck, without attribution, no footnote, no trace of me. I felt something press behind my ribs, an old familiar weight, the same one I'd carried in meetings where men interrupted, in reviews where my numbers spoke louder than their praise, in rooms where I earned the win and watched someone else take the bow. But this time, it didn't crush me, it crystallized something. I minimized the deck, took a deep breath, and began writing a new document. This time, no one else would erase my name. This time, the strategy would be mine, start to finish, and they'd regret teaching me how easily credit disappears. By Wednesday morning, something inside me had solidified. The humiliation from Vision Track hadn't broken me. It had clarified the game. Damon didn't just want obedience, he wanted erasure. He wanted a team of echo chambers, not originals, and he'd made it clear. I didn't belong in the new Veritas unless I made myself small. So I decided to do the opposite. I was going to build something too big for him to contain, then let him disqualify himself. That afternoon, during a strategy roundtable, I waited patiently while buzzwords filled the room. Impact velocity, brand recalibration, consumer-centric innovation, the usual posturing. Then, when the energy dipped, I spoke. What if we pitched a legacy repositioning campaign? I said, looking at no one in particular. Not just a rebrand, a full-circle strategic return to core purpose, something that ties past trust to future tech. The room went quiet for a beat. Then Samira, a quiet but sharp copy strategist 2 seats down, leaned in. For whom? I turned my laptop around and revealed the name. Lexora Biomed, a massive biotech firm with legacy trust issues and a rapidly modernizing product line. Difficult, elusive, and, most importantly, still undecided on an agency for their re-entry into the U.S. market. Damon had mentioned them offhand in a meeting weeks ago. No one had followed up, but I had. That night, I stayed late at the office, alone with the quiet hum of overhead lights and the low whir of the HVAC. The skyline blinked back at me through the window like 1,000 eyes. On my desk sat an empty notepad, my laptop, and a single object in the center, my silver Parker pen, the same one that had snapped. I'd taken it to a small repair shop across town the day after the award ceremony. The shop owner, an elderly man with a jeweler's hands, had smiled at the fracture and said, "Sometimes, the ink just needs a new vessel." Now it was back, reassembled, silent, waiting. I twisted it open and slid in a new ink cartridge, blue-black, my signature color. As I wrote the first words of the Lexora campaign, "Rebuilding trust begins where history left off," a strange calm washed over me, like replacing the ink had drained the doubt with it. Over the next 2 days, I brought together a skeleton team, people who still cared about the work more than the politics. Samira, David, a data strategist on the verge of quitting, Nia, a brand designer recently sidelined to color palettes only. We met off hours in conference room 7B, not by rebellion, but out of necessity. Damon's new hires filled the floor during business hours, their laughter loud, their Slack channels louder. I kept the Lexora campaign internal. No shared folders, no CC'd emails, just private logins and printed drafts passed by hand. Then came the legal paperwork. To pitch Lexora, we needed to establish intellectual property protections, standard protocol, but this time I took a new route. I submitted the campaign materials through a consulting LLC I had quietly opened 2 years ago, originally for side projects. I listed myself as the legal owner of all strategic content under that entity and positioned it as an external provider offering services through Veritas to everyone else. It looked like a time-saving tactic to move fast through Lexora's procurement process, but to me, it was insurance. Because I knew what Damon would try to do if this campaign won big. He'd bury the names. He'd take credit. He'd frame it as a team effort born from his new culture. Not this time. On Friday night, after everyone had left, I printed the final pitch draft. As the last page slid from the printer, I looked at the footer, Carr Strategic Advisory, licensed partner, and I smiled. Let him see it. Let him approve it. Let him think he's using me to win. Because the moment he forgets who actually owns the idea is the moment he hands me the match to light the fire. The war room wasn't official. It was just an unused office on the east side of the building, flickering ceiling lights, a wobbly conference table, and a whiteboard too stained to ever come clean. But for us, it became the heart of the Lexora pitch. No Slack threads, no Zoom links, just pure focus and the sound of markers squeaking across glass as we reimagined a biotech brand from the inside out. We were a strange little crew. Samira handled tone, language, nuance. She had the uncanny gift of making clinical jargon sound like poetry. David, still halfway out the door emotionally, immersed himself in analytics with the same reckless brilliance that made him indispensable. Nia was pure fire. Her designs lit up every mood board like protest art on a deadline. And then there was Theo. Theo had been with Veritas just 6 months, fresh out of grad school. Quiet, careful, but always observing. I noticed him scribbling notes during our late-night sessions, then staying behind to reorganize the board when no one was watching. It wasn't long before I pulled him into the inner circle. "You've got eyes like a strategist," I told him. He smiled, nervous but proud. "I'm just trying to learn from the best." We worked through weekends. Late into the night, delivery apps became our kitchen. We rotated playlists. Nia preferred aggressive techno. Samira insisted on lo-fi beats. And I found myself drifting back to the same old instrumental piano piece I always played when writing alone. The one that steadied my pulse and sharpened my thoughts. At some point, the office forgot about us. Damon's team was too busy with their culture sprint and internal comms revamp. We became invisible, and that was exactly how I wanted it. Because while they were posing for photos, we were building something real. I poured everything into the framework: client psychology, industry shifts, preemptive crisis language, modular rollout options. I slept 4 hours a night. My eyes burned. My back ached. But I felt alive. This was what I loved. The clarity of pure creation under pressure. No politics, no ego, just a tightrope walk between collapse and genius. One night, as I stood at the whiteboard mapping Phase 2, Theo hovered nearby, hesitating. "What is it?" I asked without turning. He shifted on his feet. "Are you leaving, Lauren?" I froze. The marker stilled in my hand. I turned slowly. His face was innocent, but there was worry in it. The kind of worry that doesn't come from rumors, but from patterns. From watching someone slowly pack pieces of themselves into something new. "I'm not going anywhere," I said carefully. "Not yet." He nodded, but he didn't believe me. And the truth was, I wasn't sure I believed myself either. After he left, I stayed behind and stared at the board. My own words looked back at me. Vision lines and brand pillars that had the power to change a company's future. And maybe mine, too. I picked up my Parker pen, now fully restored, and signed the bottom of the final concept brief. Lauren Carr, Principal Strategist. Not for show, not for ego, for ownership. Quiet, indisputable ownership. 2 days later, the draft presentation went out under Veritas's name, but with a small, barely noticeable footer on every page. Strategy support provided in partnership with Carr Strategic Advisory. No one asked. No one caught it. Not yet. And I didn't care. Because I wasn't just pitching Lexora. I was pitching my future, built in a forgotten office, with a team no one noticed, on a timeline no one believed in, and I was going to win or burn out trying. The night before the awards ceremony, the office was quieter than usual, eerily so. The hall lights had dimmed to a soft glow, and most of the staff had cleared out hours earlier, swept away by Friday drinks or early flights to the event. But I stayed. I always stayed. I wasn't touching the Lexora deck anymore. It was done, submitted, approved. Now it lived on a secure drive, set to be shown on the big screen tomorrow if all went well. The only thing left was the waiting. And the silence. I sat alone in the corner of conference room 7B. The lights off. The city blinking through the floor-to-ceiling windows behind me. My laptop glowed softly against the glass table. The cursor blinked on a blank Word doc. Mocking me? Outside. The wind rattled a loose piece of window paneling, somewhere down the hall. The elevator dinged, but no one stepped out. I was exhausted, not just from the work, but from the act, the performance, pretending that I still believed this company, this system, had space for someone like me. For a moment, I hovered my cursor over the Lexora folder on my desktop. My hand moved slowly, almost mechanically, toward the delete key. Just erase it, a voice whispered. Before they do. That's when the email arrived. Subject: Team Restructure, Q1 Forecast. From Lauren Carr at Veritas Group. To Damon Kessler at Veritas Group, CC. Core Strategy Team at Veritas Group, Body. Attached: Preliminary Staffing Adjustments, Post-Award Cycle, Targeted Departures, LC, MD, TP, Final Review Pending. It wasn't meant for me. It was forwarded by mistake. Someone had copied my email instead of internal legal. But there it was. My initials, LC, not even my full name. Just a bullet point under departures. Ha! Like I was an outdated fixture on a renovation plan. I sat frozen for a long minute, staring at the screen. My mouth went dry. A strange heat built in my chest. Not rage, but something quieter, something heavier. Confirmation. All the suspicion, all the tension, all the silences. It was never just in my head. They had planned to cut me the moment the campaign was over. I closed the email, leaned back in my chair, and looked up at the ceiling. The buzzing of the light fixture above me suddenly felt unbearable. The silence in the rest of the building had teeth. My fingers returned to the mouse, hovered again over the Lexora folder. I right-clicked, delete? But before I could move further, my phone buzzed on the table. One new message, no name, just a number I hadn't saved in years. Still rooting for you. I stared at it. The message was from Miranda, one of my oldest clients. We hadn't spoken since she left her role at Greyline Biotech. She had seen the announcement about the award online, and despite everything, she'd reached out, one line, no context. But it hit me harder than any speech could, because someone still saw me, the real me, not the version Damon had flattened into a personnel code. I dropped my hand from the mouse, closed the folder, not deleted, just closed. Then I opened a new document and typed one sentence. Even when they erase your name, your work still echoes. I saved it. Then I picked up my Parker pen, twirled it once, and placed it in the side pocket of my blazer, right next to my heart. Tomorrow. I would stand on that stage and deliver the win they wanted, but it wouldn't be for them. It would be for the people who still saw me. And maybe, finally, for myself. The stage lights were hot, but the room itself felt cold. I stood at the edge of the platform, heart steady, back straight. A single spotlight illuminating the sea of suits and sequins beyond. The applause rolled through the ballroom in polite, measured waves, more protocol than passion. Still, I smiled. Not the big, dazzling kind they expected, just enough. Enough to say, I know what this is. Enough to say, I know what I've done. Enough to say, this moment is mine, even if none of you want to admit it. I wore a black suit, sharp, clean lines, no sparkles, no color, just quiet defiance, pinned to my left lapel, just over the heart, was my silver Parker pen, now fully repaired, its metal gleaming under the lights. No one in the room would understand the symbol, but I didn't pin it for them. I pinned it for me, for every strategy I'd written in silence, for every room I'd walked into twice as prepared, for every time my ideas had a man's name stapled on top. The announcer had read my name with perfect clarity. Lauren Carr, Principal Strategist, Veritas Group. The room clapped. Damon did not. I caught the flicker in his expression as the camera panned across the table. A tight jaw, a short clap, eyes like glass. No joy, no pride, just calculation. He hadn't expected Lexora to win, not under my lead, and he certainly hadn't expected the client to go off script and mention me by name, twice. I climbed the 3 steps to the podium slowly, breathing in through my nose, then out through my mouth. Samira sat in the 3rd row, her fingers interlaced tightly. David gave a small nod. Nia was already crying. I stood at the mic and looked at the crowd, rows and rows of polished people, many of whom had no idea what Lexora was, much less what it had taken to rebuild it from the ground up. And I began. Strategy, I said, isn't a logo or a slogan or a keynote slide. It's the invisible thread people feel when a brand keeps its word. Some faces turned curious, some bored. Damon looked down at his watch. We talk a lot about innovation, agility, disruption. I continued. But those are just costumes without something deeper underneath. Trust, consistency, and yes, loyalty. I saw a flicker in his jaw. I pressed on. The Lexora campaign didn't work because it was flashy. It worked because the people behind it knew how to listen, to patients, to partners, and to each other. I paused, scanned the crowd, let the silence breathe. Great brands, I said, slower now, clearer, are built on loyalty, not hierarchy. It landed like a quiet fire. Some people clapped reflexively, others froze, unsure if they'd just witnessed something rebellious or profound. Damon stood up and walked out. He didn't slam a door. He didn't make a scene. He just left. Before I finished my speech, before I could even thank the team, before the photographers could snap the final shot, I looked down for a beat. The pen gleamed back at me. Then I smiled again. This time not for show. Later. Backstage. The energy buzzed like static. Industry names passed by with champagne flutes and shallow praise. Some offered congratulations with that subtle tilt in their tone. The kind that says, "We didn't expect that from you." I thanked them politely. Didn't linger. In a quiet hallway near the staff entrance, I found a moment to myself. Samira appeared beside me with 2 glasses of something vaguely celebratory. "You torched him," she said with a grin. "I didn't even say his name." "Exactly." We clinked glasses. I drank half, then handed her mine. My stomach couldn't handle more than that. Theo, the junior strategist, joined us minutes later, eyes wide with admiration. "That was the best thing I've ever seen," he whispered, then quickly added, "Are you in trouble?" I looked at him for a long second. "I don't know. Maybe. Probably." He nodded like he understood more than he should have, but I saw the way he stood taller, prouder. I saw the seed of something, belief, maybe, or defiance of his own, back at the hotel that night. I sat on the bed fully dressed, award on the desk, heels on the floor, pen still pinned to my chest. My inbox was already filling with messages from clients, industry peers, and a few names I hadn't heard in years. But one email stopped me cold. From Core Strategy, subject, Monday's alignment meeting, lead strategist transition. No name, no greeting, just the sentence. See attached for team reassignment post-awards. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. The applause had ended, the stage was clear, and the curtain was finally falling, just not on me. The morning after the award felt like walking into a funeral where no one remembered who had died. The halls of Veritas were quiet. Too quiet for a Monday. No congratulations. No balloons. Not even the obligatory team email blast. I passed coworkers who barely met my gaze, their eyes darting back to screens as I walked by. The ones who did acknowledge me offered tight, rehearsed smiles, too polished to be sincere. By the time I reached my desk, I already knew something was coming, but I didn't expect it to be so performative. At exactly 9:01, Mia from HR appeared at my door. She didn't knock, just hovered. Damon's asked to see you in conference room 2B. Sarka, her tone was neutral, but her eyes flickered, almost like an apology. I grabbed my notebook, stood up calmly, and followed. The room was already half full when I arrived. Damon sat at the head of the table, flanked by two executives I barely recognized, both from the new leadership tier. Across from him sat Mia, tablet in hand, lips pressed into a silent line. The door clicked shut behind me. No handshake, no greeting, no chair pulled out. I remained standing. Damon gestured to a folder on the table. "Lauren," he said, voice dry as old paper. "As you know, we're undergoing significant cultural realignment. After reviewing Q1 objectives, we've decided your leadership style no longer aligns with the direction we're heading." I didn't flinch. He slid the folder forward. Inside, a single-page termination agreement. Mia reached for a pen, but I beat her to it. I pulled the Parker from my lapel, clicked it once, and poised it above the line. Damon leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. "You became the story." "Lauren," he added, almost as an afterthought. "That's the problem." The pen hovered for half a second. Then I signed. The entire meeting lasted less than 4 minutes. I left without asking a single question. Not because I didn't have any, but because I already knew all the answers. Back at my desk, I found a brown box waiting, like they'd prepped it over the weekend. Someone had even started packing for me my mug, a framed photo of my old team, 3 notebooks. The rest was still scattered across drawers and file folders, like evidence of a career that suddenly didn't count anymore. Naya arrived as I was clearing out my top drawer. She didn't say anything at first, just picked up my Lexora mood board, studied it for a beat, then slipped it quietly into my box. "I thought we were building something real," she finally said. I nodded. "We were." She swallowed hard. "Then why are you the one leaving?" I couldn't answer that. Not yet. Maybe not ever. As I reached for the bottom drawer, something slid free from the pile of papers and clattered to the floor. The Parker. It hit the carpeted floor with a dull click and rolled to a stop beside my foot. I bent down slowly, picked it up, uncapped it. The ink was still full, smooth, ready. It was strange. How something so small could feel so weighty. A relic, a weapon, a heartbeat. I slipped it into my blazer pocket again, just above my chest. By the time I stood to leave, most of the floor had gone silent. People were pretending to be in meetings, tapping at invisible emails, speaking softly on calls that weren't happening. Only Samira met my eyes. She didn't blink, didn't wave, but she stood, in a company where standing could get you removed. It was everything. Theo trailed after me to the elevator. I didn't know," he said, his voice small. I pressed the down button. The doors opened. "I did," I replied. "But it's still different when it happens." Inside the elevator, I stared at my reflection in the mirrored wall. Same blazer, same pen, same woman. But something was missing, and something else had hardened in its place. The digital floor counter ticked down slowly. 7, 6, 5. I was gone. Just like that. No farewell party, no HR gift bag, No legacy preserved, just silence, and a pen full of ink that no one thought to take back. And somewhere between floor 4 and 3, I realized something. They didn't fire me because I failed. They fired me because I mattered, because they couldn't own what they hadn't built. And I had built something too strong to erase. I didn't cry. Not in the elevator, not in the lobby, not in the Uber home. By the time I reached my apartment, the city had sunk into late afternoon shadows, and the skyline glowed with that muted silver light I used to associate with possibility. Now, it felt like something else. Not defeat, not bitterness, just quiet clarity. I dropped the box on my kitchen counter without looking inside, walked to my old record player, something I hadn't touched in months, and carefully pulled out the sleeve marked Nocturnes. Opus 9. Chopin, the music I used to play every time I needed to think clearly, to reset the battlefield in my mind. The opening notes filled the apartment like a whisper, and I exhaled. The Parker pen lay on the table next to my laptop, gleaming under a warm pool of lamplight. It hadn't left my side all day. I clicked it once out of habit before opening my personal email and creating a blank message. To Miranda, Hall, Vincent, Tran, Elise, Ramos, Kenneth, Lee, Jordan, Yates subject, no subject body. If you ever need me, you know where to find me. Signature, Lauren. I hit send. No attachments, no pitch decks, no accusations, just the truth in its simplest form. Those 5 names weren't just clients. They were 5 companies I'd helped pull through messes, rebuild from scandal, weather market collapses, and quietly fix what louder agencies had broken. They didn't just trust Veritas. They trusted me, and now, I'd given them a door, just a jar. No pressure, no promises, only presence. While the music played, I opened a document I hadn't touched in 2 years. The original incorporation paperwork for Carr Strategic Advisory LLC. I had filed it back when I thought maybe one day, far in the future, I'd build something of my own. Now it was no longer maybe, it was math. It was motion. It was time. The next morning, I met with Martina Sandoval, a commercial real estate agent I'd worked with back in my earliest days at Veritas. We met at a coffee shop across the street from my old office, the windows giving me a perfect view of the building I'd just been ejected from. Still want something in Midtown? She asked, tapping her tablet. I nodded. Small, close to transit, with a door that locks. She raised an eyebrow, but didn't ask questions. That was one of the reasons I liked her. By 11:30, she had a listing. Technically, it's a sublease from a software firm that just downsized. Quiet floor. Good light. Oh, and it's in the same building as Veritas. She paused. 2 floors down. Actually, I sipped my espresso. Send me the lease. At 3:15, I signed the contract with the same Parker pen, blue-black ink, as always, and shook Martina's hand. I'll keep this between us, she said softly. You always do. Back home, I updated my business website. Nothing flashy, just a clean homepage with my name, contact info, and a 1-line headline. Clarity, strategy, execution. Then I sent one final email. To Samira Khan at protonmail.com. Subject, no rush. Body, if you ever want to build something real again, I'll have an extra desk, quiet floor, great lighting. I stared at the screen for a moment before hitting send. That night, I stood in my empty living room, music still playing. The city pulsed beyond the windows, and I watched the lights in the Veritas building blink on. One by one, I imagined them gearing up for another round of meetings about culture, growth, synergy, and I smiled, not out of malice, but recognition. They were still playing checkers, and I had already moved to chess. Strategic calm isn't silence, It's the moment before the board tips, and I had just placed the first piece. The email came in at 7:03 in the morning. Just 3 words in the subject line. Termination of services. No preamble. No context. But I didn't need any. I knew exactly what it was. The sender, Elise Ramos, Chief Communications Officer at Bravian Pharmaceuticals, one of Veritas's oldest, most loyal accounts, a client I had personally nurtured for 6 years, through 2 rebrands, one global recall, and a CEO scandal that nearly tanked their reputation. I opened the message, "Dear Damon, after careful consideration, Bravian will be terminating its partnership with Veritas, effective immediately. No transition period is required. This decision is final. We will be seeking alternative strategic representation in the coming weeks. Please consider this email formal notice. Best regards." Elise Ramos. There was no mention of me, but that omission said everything. I closed the laptop gently and looked up at the wall. A large corkboard hung above my desk, my only piece of decor in the tiny subleased office 2 floors below Veritas. I had pinned 5 red dots on it last week, each representing a former client I'd contacted. 5 companies. 5 cities. Now I stood up, reached into my drawer, and grabbed a small gold pushpin. Click. 1 more dot. Bravian had moved. I didn't cheer. I didn't pump a fist. Instead, I went to the coffee machine, poured a cup, and stood by the window, watching the street below come alive. Delivery bikes, early joggers, a mother in heels wrangling a toddler and a latte. Behind me, my small desk hummed with quiet certainty. Everything in this space was earned, not handed, paid for with my own money, secured with my own name, and slowly, subtly, it was starting to take on gravity. By mid-morning, the industry blog agency Pulse broke the story. Bravian drops Veritas after award-winning campaign. Sources suggest internal conflict. It was a short article, but it said enough. Undisclosed sources pointed to executive turnover and poor post-campaign communication. My name wasn't mentioned, but the phrase "key strategist no longer with the agency" was enough for anyone paying attention. An hour later, my phone buzzed with a text from Samira. They're in full panic mode upstairs. Emergency meeting at 10:30. Damon's pacing like a caged lion. I smiled into my coffee. The cracks were spreading. At noon, I received an unexpected email. From Leah Martin at protonmail.com. Subject resume. In confidence body. Hi, Lauren. I don't know if you remember me. I was on the logistics side of the Halvex project. I just saw the news about Bravian. If you're building something, I'd love to be a part of it. Attached, resume, PDF, note. Ready when you are? I remembered Leah perfectly. Quiet, meticulous, the kind of mind that made systems run without fanfare. The type Damon never valued because she didn't talk in buzzwords. I opened the resume. It was crisp, well-structured, but it was the note that mattered more than anything. Ready when you are. I pinned it, digitally and emotionally. Later that day, I walked to the whiteboard across from my corkboard and updated the status column on my internal tracker. Bravian. Official status. Redirected current. Pending proposal. CSA. Car Strategic Advisory. Then I added a new column beside it. Interest. Internal talent. Name, Leah Martin. Skill set, Ops PM. Priority, high. Everything I built now had a different rhythm. Every action was intentional. There was no applause, no internal backpatting, no rah-rah culture slides, just clean moves and real results. At 4:30 in the afternoon, a rainstorm rolled in. I watched through the window as it slicked the sidewalk in quicksilver streaks. Veritas's building was still lit up, and from my vantage point, I could see silhouettes moving behind the conference room glass. Damon's emergency meetings were never quiet affairs. I imagined the blame being tossed like a live grenade, someone suggesting client outreach issues, someone else bringing up the leadership transition after the award. A few might even whisper my name, just low enough to deny it. Let them. I had no interest in going back, only in moving forward before leaving the office. I added one more thing to the wall, a quote I printed on heavy cardstock, centered, bold. Collapse doesn't begin with an explosion. It begins with a whisper, when the people who built the foundation walk away. Then I turned off the lights, locked the door, and stepped out into the quiet. Rain-washed evening. The cracks had begun, and they weren't stopping. By the end of the week, 3 more clients were gone, not slowly, not with long negotiations or transition calls. They vanished, quiet and clinical. Each sent a formal 1-paragraph email, severing ties with Veritas immediately. No handover, no second chances. The cracks weren't cracks anymore. They were fractures, and I could feel the water rising behind them. Inside Veritas, it was chaos. Samira kept me updated through encrypted messages, short bursts like dispatches from the front line. Damon fired Jared this morning, blamed him for client retention failure. New pitch team had their access revoked. It thought it was a breach. 3 directors in a closed-door fight. Someone threw a folder. I pictured it like a building under demolition, where the supports go first. Then the people start running. The ones who once looked past me, now scrambling for balance, slipping on the same arrogance they built their platforms on. Meanwhile, 2 floors below, I had just added a second desk to my office. Not symbolic, functional. Leah started Monday. She brought her own keyboard and a cactus named Barry. By mid-afternoon, she had reorganized my task system, linked all client communications, and integrated billing software I didn't even know I needed. She's an ops wizard, David said later that day, dropping by with a folder. Good call. David had joined 3 days earlier, after Lexora made their decision public, citing a desire to maintain continuity with their original strategist. He walked out of Veritas and into my office with nothing but a backpack, a hard drive, and that slight half-smile he always wore when he knew a storm had broken exactly as forecast. On Wednesday, Nia walked in during lunch, holding 2 boba teas and a folded resignation letter. I didn't even give them 2 weeks, she said. They didn't deserve my last 2 hours. I handed her the bigger desk by the window. By Friday, we were 5 people deep, a war room again, but this time, with laughter, music, motion, a printer that worked. The first campaign pitch under Carr Strategic Advisory was due next week. 3 clients had signed full contracts. 2 others were in the final stage. We had work, real work, the kind that demanded presence, precision, and guts. And we had all 3, at noon that day. My personal email pinged. The sender stopped me cold. Jonathan Markwell, a name I hadn't seen in 2 years. A venture capitalist with a sleek smile, glassy words, and a portfolio of failed, founder-focused startups. Back when I first filed for Carr Strategic Advisory, I pitched him the idea: lean, legacy-centered consulting powered by senior strategists instead of junior churn. He had dismissed it. Too niche, too slow, too... You. Now he was writing me. Hey, Lauren, saw the Lexora piece. Strong positioning. Looks like you're building something with teeth. Let's catch up. I'd love to talk funding if you're looking to scale. I stared at the screen for a long moment. Then I replied, Hey, Jonathan. Appreciate the note. At this point, I'm not looking to scale. I'm looking to build, wishing you the best. Then I archived the thread, later that afternoon. Samira buzzed in unexpectedly. She stepped into the office holding a brown paper bag, eyes gleaming. They cut my hours, she said simply. Told me I wasn't aligned with the new team charter. What did you say? I asked. She smirked. I said, Great. Now I can finally work somewhere with an actual soul. I handed her a chair by 5 o'clock. I stood at the corkboard and added 2 more gold pushpins, one for a new client, one for Samira. The board was nearly full now. The map wasn't just a tracking tool anymore. It was a statement, a constellation, a living reminder that while Veritas was crumbling, I was building, patiently, deliberately, with the people they'd overlooked and underestimated. As the sun dipped behind the skyline, I stood in the doorway of my office and watched the team, my team, still typing, sketching, debating fonts, drinking lukewarm coffee with reckless passion. They weren't working for a title. They were working for the feeling, the one that says we matter, the one that Veritas forgot. I didn't need a revenge headline. I didn't need Jonathan's money. I had something stronger, a name that now meant something, a team that had walked through fire and chose to start again, and clients who didn't follow the brand. They followed the person behind it. The flood hadn't destroyed me. It had washed everything false away, and what remained was power. The magazine hit newsstands on a Thursday. I didn't even know they were doing a cover story. One of Lexora's comms directors had tipped off a journalist weeks ago, and the story had snowballed. But when I stepped out of the elevator that morning and saw it stacked in a neat little display by the lobby cafe, I stopped in my tracks. There I was. Black suit, arms crossed, silver Parker pen clipped neatly to my lapel. The headline, "The strategist they tried to erase," and the clients who followed her anyway. The article didn't pull punches. It traced my departure, the client fallout, the chaos at Veritas, and the quiet rise of Carr Strategic Advisory. They didn't call it revenge. They called it reclamation. I bought 10 copies, upstairs. The team was already buzzing. Samira was fielding 2 new RFPs. David was talking analytics with a biotech lead from Seattle. Nia was on the whiteboard, sketching campaign flow. Leah was building infrastructure like we were about to double in size. And honestly, we might. The energy was real, not performative, not bonus chasing, Slack reacting, corporate theater, just focus, drive, mutual belief. I slipped into my new office and closed the door behind me. Floor-to-ceiling windows, exposed concrete walls, minimal decor, just a single wooden desk in the center, and the corkboard from my last office. Now fully pinned with client dots. Stood proud on the far wall like a battle map complete. I placed the magazine face up in the corner of the desk. Then, from my blazer pocket, I took out the Parker, still gleaming, still full of ink. I placed it in the exact center of the table. A symbol, a blade, a beginning. That's when the email came in. The sender made my stomach drop for half a second. Corporate Communications at Veritas Group. I clicked it open. Subject: Partnership, Proposal, Discussion. Hi Lauren. Given the evolving industry landscape and your current positioning, the executive team at Veritas would like to explore the possibility of a strategic partnership between our firms. Let us know a good time for a conversation. Warm regards. Alan C., VP, Strategic Growth. I stared at the screen. Not Damon. He was gone. No doubt. Either resigned or removed. Now they wanted to collaborate with the very person they dismissed, with the person they once labeled too ambitious. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I simply closed the laptop, stood, and walked to the window. The skyline stretched out in front of me, familiar but forever changed. And in that silence, I finally understood. Ambition wasn't my flaw. It was the only reason they ever noticed me, and the exact reason they fell. If you've ever been told you were too much, too loud, too smart, too driven, I want you to know, you're not the problem. You are the proof that they couldn't keep up. Tell me, have you ever walked away from somewhere that didn't value you, only to become stronger? Share your story in the comments. And if this story hit home, hit like. Share it with someone who needs it. And don't forget to subscribe for more real stories of quiet power and strategic revenge. Your ambition isn't a threat, it's your edge.